All right. So welcome to our another episode of Powerhouse Conversations. I'm your host, Dream Big Fred. Today we got a special episode, our 2024 year in review. This year was one of the breakthroughs, transformations, historic milestones across sports and entertainment industries. Some of the biggest new stars have been emerged, and then the trends in women's basketball, and then also just the ever evolving NIL landscape, debates over player safety. We're going to dive into the biggest moments that shaped the conversations this year. We're going to explore a lot of the headlines and some of the things that changed the game, because it's a lot of big stuff. So, like I said, we got NBA, we got NIL, we got college football, we got NFL, we got the fan engagement piece of it, and then obviously women's sports. How you doing today? We got Darian Kelly with us as always.
Man, Fred, it's a pleasure as always. It's holiday time, wrapping up, getting ready to go into 2025. A lot of football being played right now, NFL to college, a lot of business being handled in the world of sports. So I'm excited to dive right into it, man. Let's do it.
No, dope. I hope you had a good holiday season. How was everything?
Man, everything was beautiful, man. Caught up with the family. It's always good to unplug and catch up with the family and just, reflect on things. Sometimes you need that time with the family to really, see how far you've come. And so I enjoyed it a lot. How was your holiday?
It was good. It was good. Had some time to, as you said, like just take some time with the family, play with the kids. They had a great holiday. So as long as they have a great holiday, I had a great holiday. So it's always good. Always good. So let's go first, man. Everything, with the NBA, I definitely always want to dive in. I have a unique opinion about it. I have a, one that isn't the norm, but let's just dive into it. So this year, the NBA faced mixed results. Record high team evaluations for the teams, mixed reviews on the in-season tournament. But then the biggest thing that everyone wants to talk about is the regular season ratings continuing to dip, and then fans voicing concerns over the league style of play. And then the biggest, another big thing is just icons like LeBron, Steph, KD, they're coming to the end of their career. So the question remains, what does the NBA need to do to recapture the American audience and reignite interest in the game? What's your thoughts on that? On out.
Yeah, I think that the NBA, as you mentioned, I think what you said was interesting. We're at a time where the stars that we kind of, whether you not necessarily grew up on it, but your favorite stars, the LeBrons, the KDs, the Steph Currys of the world, their careers are not necessarily trending down, but they're getting to the latter stages of their careers. Even though their games have been dropped off, they're getting to that point where, we're at a point where you have an audience that remembered when they first came into the NBA, and now you have these young stars, like the Anthony Edwards of the world, the Shea Gilgeous-Alexanders of the world that are really dominating, and Jason Tatum. So I think that what we're seeing is a changing of the guard. I think that we have to now kind of shift to these young stars and what they're doing and how they're building their teams. And I think ultimately that will translate into, more people wanting to watch the league. I think that, the in-season tournament this year, what was, I think was a great addition. I think the in-season tournament helps get, fans engaged, moving forward. So I look forward to that, to being a staple of engagement for the NBA overall as a product. But then you also factor in the fact that we also have international stars as well, the Giannis Antetokounmpos of the world, Luka Doncic of the world, Jokic, won a title. So it's we're at a time where we also have that mix of international stars. So I think that the NBA, is going through this rough patch. I mean, you think even with the Christmas Day games, right? To me, the best game was that the Lakers and Warriors game, right? Where we had LeBron and Steph Curry going at it, but it's like at the same time, we're kind of, we've seen LeBron go up against the Warriors so many years. It's like we want to see something new. And I think that other leagues like the NFL, they have that mix of young stars, up-and-coming stars, as well as those, older stars, but they're figuring out a way to kind of usher them into the audience to the point where, like, young kids now, they know who, the Joe Burrows, they know who Lamar Jackson is. They're wearing those elite jerseys. So I think that they're doing a great job of bringing those audience together.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing. I hear it all the time that the NBA needs a new face of the NBA, a new American face of the NBA, right? But if you look at it, NBA's global expansion, their fan base grew in 2024 and then had a notable increase in the fan base in European, African, and Asian markets. And that comes from, you having these global stars like Luka, Giannis, Jokic. And I think that a lot of the people's interest is like, skewed by that. I don't understand why you need an American star to be interested in the game. Like we've always had good foreign players, but if they play for your team, and I think that's a little bit where the disconnect comes from, is like, people are still packing out the arenas to go see these players play. They may not be turning on their TVs, and I think the difference is that we have so many different things going on that I don't think it's a lack of interest, because like I said, they're still coming out of their pocket, spending money on these players to watch them play in person. They're still buying the jerseys. Jersey sales are up. Like I said, arenas are selling out. Like I read something that said, I think it was 95% of the teams are selling out their arenas. So you can't come to me and talk to me about the ratings, but they're spending their hard-earned dollars. What do you think costs more? Them spending the money to. Have you ever been to an NBA game?
Yeah, I have.
Like,
it's funny. If you want good, great seats, and you got to think about concessions. You got to think about merchandise. So it's a business within a business.
They're spending money to go to the game. So you can't try to tell me that the ratings are bad and the NBA is in trouble, but they're still spending their money to go to games. Like it costs a lot of money to take your family to a game. Like just think about how, like, you're spending $200, like just to get some decent seats, some $200 a person. You got a family of 4, that's $800. Then when you factor in spending money at the concession stand, buying your kid a jersey, buying your kids some shirts, like that costs money. And so I think that's something that I think they're going to continue to pay attention to. I think the mid-season tournament is going to help that. I think, as well as to address the style of play. Like I think that's going to be big. I think that people are there. It's just nostalgia, man. I really do feel like people have, like, there is a sense of a difference in the style of play, but I think that the nostalgia of what you grew up on, because I said this to someone earlier, when KG was taking jump shots, when Dirk was taking mid-range jump shots, everybody was telling them, hey, you're a big man, go get in the paint. It's no different. Like, we think because we were in our era and, we look back at it, it's amazing. But the era before us was saying the same thing about our players. So the Magic Johnsons and the Mike, like, they were saying, oh, that was the great time. And so now we're the old heads saying our era was the best. This era sucks. It's no different, because the old heads before us was saying our era was the best. This era sucks. It's the same thing.
Yeah, it's a never-ending cycle. I feel like every generation is always going to have some sort of a critique from the one before, no matter how old or young you are. Those criticisms are going to be there. But yeah, I think you touched on a key thing with the fact that, now professional leagues, and now that we have streaming and all these other aspects of how you consume sports, I think that we also have to kind of, as much as we put a lot of stock in ratings and how those numbers measure up, you also, like you said, you got to factor in the fact that people still go to these games. And I think that that's because we live in such a technical, age. It's like we only care about the numbers of, who's sitting home and watching. Like, you can sit home. Most people were, sitting home and watching football. They're not really going, to the actual, I'm not saying they're not going, but I'm saying that you look at, Thursday night football, Sunday night football, Monday night. I mean, they own these days, and you have on the streaming component. I mean, it's just like everybody's so fixated on those streaming numbers that you don't even really understand what's happening, with these fans that are actually going. So,
not even just sports, like just streaming across the board. We have so many different things pulling at our attention that people aren't realizing that, of course, the numbers are going to go down because people are able to do all these different types of things. And like, that's something that you have to pay attention to. And then I feel like, even from the player standpoint, I feel like they're in a tough spot, right? They're getting paid all this money. They have been told by fans and media that what they do in the regular season does not matter. What you do in the playoffs matters. So you're telling them that it doesn't matter. Oh, I don't care that you scored 50 and you're going for 30 something. If you didn't do it in the playoffs, it doesn't matter. But then you're also saying, oh man, y'all are soft. Y'all are sitting out of games. Like, it's just like they're in a lose-lose situation. You can't win. If I play hard in the regular season and I do well, you're going to discount it if I don't do the same thing in the playoffs. So why not, if I'm this superstar, why not save myself for the playoffs? because that's when I feel like I have to perform. I think that we as a fan base have to be recalibrated to how we view and how we think and how we treat the players, and understand that like there is a level of, like I said, it's not what you grew up on. This is something new, as well as like just be appreciative to the product that you're seeing. You are seeing the best of the best play basketball at the highest level. And I can guarantee you the era that you grew up on is not as talented as this era. It's like from top to bottom, the talent is crazy. And so I think that's one thing. Is well, one other thing to close out the NBA topic was like we got to see LeBron create history with it was very controversial, but Bronny, they've got to play together. That was a big thing. What are some of the other big things that stood out to you from the 2024 from the NBA season?
Yeah, I think for me, on top of the, with LeBron, LeBron and Bronny also having, having that appearance, I think also the numbers for, the Christmas Day games is really interesting for me as far as, the season is concerned. They said that there was I think it was Front Office Sports that reported there was a 5% overall increase in viewership, even though those games they've seen peak viewership on Christmas Day. The viewership numbers aren't where they need to be. So I thought that was interesting, because there was a lot of hype surrounding Christmas Day, as far as, even LeBron said it, he like, I love the NFL, but Christmas is our day. But if you look at the numbers, it looks a lot different. So I think, I think that was interesting. That was fascinating to me from the NBA season as well.
No, that's definitely a good segue right into the NFL. Like the NFL continued to dominate in 2024. They even did some international expansion. The crazy successful Beyonce Bowl, as we'll call it. But there's some things about player safety. How do you see, like, what was your biggest takeaway from the NFL in 2024?
I would say the biggest takeaway is that I think the NFL is going to continue to, grow, its, global expansion, grow its fan base. I mean, you're adding on, I believe, another game in Germany next year. You had the Brazil games this year. So I think that that's just going to continue to happen. But as the NFL expands, I really want them to consider the players, aspect of it. So you think of like traveling to these international, these countries. You think of, like, for example, the Ravens and the Chiefs, I believe, played 3 games in 11 days.
Yes.
So I think that the NFL is, I think that they set the bar as far as, engagement. Of course, Roger Goodell's done a great job of that, partnerships with these different streaming platforms. But I think for me, the biggest thing I took away from the season is, like, man, all this money the NFL is making, and it don't really seem like the players, not necessarily the safety, but just also just what the players have to go through as far as these new games and these new initiatives. I feel like there's no balance within that. Like, yeah, it's great that we get a Germany game or a game in, Brazil, or great games on Christmas, but it's like, what about the fact that they got to play again on another Sunday? So I think that they got to really factor that in going forward.
Yeah, I agree. I think the like just going those days of, like, okay, they feel like, okay, well, if you're playing on Thursday, then okay, we'll just put you on another Thursday night, or playing on Wednesday. Like, it's really wild because of what football does to your body, the collisions and the things of that nature. Like, so are we really, really worried about and concerned about player safety, or are we concerned about, the dollars and the ratings and continuing to grow overseas and international, because that's where you're trying to go. And I think that's going to be a very important thing to understand moving forward when you're scheduling these long international trips. And I think that's something that they're going to have to pay attention to. What's your thoughts about, like, do you think that they're going to have an international team at some point? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
I think that before they get an international team, I think that we'll probably get a international Super Bowl before that. Like, I think that there was not necessarily some reports, but I think that they've been trying to, like, kind of consume or organize the data to say, okay, can this actually happen, particularly in London, right? Because I know London I think we've had maybe 2 London games this year. So I think that the NFL's presence in London will probably gear them up for a potential Super Bowl down the line. Do I think it's going to happen immediately? No, but I think that that's what the buildup is going to be from an international standpoint. And you also factor in, you're going to have flag football in the 2028 Olympics. So and that's going to be our, we're hosting that Olympics in LA. So that's that's going to be an interesting caveat as well to see like how all those countries that we've had different games in, how they're going to, take to this NFL flag football initiative going forward. So I think that's what we can expect.
No, that's definitely interesting. I think a international Super Bowl would be dope. My question would be, how much pushback do we get from from American fans of taking the Super Bowl away from, that host city? But it's not like the host city, like their team isn't always playing in it. So it doesn't really necessarily, as long as you can pack out the games, it's going to be on TV to watch just like everybody else, like every other game I'm at.
Yeah. And then also too, I think also like, I feel like more people, I feel like going to a Super Bowl is very, like, if you're a fan and you go to a Super Bowl, it's like a big moment, but you probably watched more Super Bowls at home than actually attended. So I don't think that, like, the Super Bowl could be played. I don't know. We could play it anywhere, but people are going to watch it. It's going to be watched regardless. Wherever it's at.
And a good point to that is that you got to think about it from the perspective. If you could afford to go to the Super Bowl, you probably could afford to go to London for the Super Bowl. Like nobody's
exactly.
Most people aren't just taking their last dollar and taking it and go spending it on the Super Bowl. Like if you could afford to go to the Super Bowl, you could afford to get that flight to London and go to the Super Bowl.
Exactly. I mean, look at last year in Vegas. Like they had the Super Bowl in Vegas, and it was like between the hotel rooms and the fact that I think in Vegas they have, you can get bottle service in Reliance Stadium, and there's just so many different things that they added to the point where it was like you didn't even have to leave the stadium. Every piece of entertainment you needed on top of the actual game was there. So
I definitely would stamp that. In the next 10 years, we'll see that for sure. In the next 10 years, we'll see a international Super Bowl. Which it also, we brought up the Super Bowl and it being in certain cities, and it brings me to the controversy surrounding Kendrick Lamar being chosen for the Super Bowl. That was a big part of 2024. Everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people expecting Lil Wayne to get the Super Bowl because it was in New Orleans, which I thought was like I didn't think it. I thought it was crazy because like just the year that Kendrick had, he was a no-brainer. The type of performer that Kendrick is, the cachet that he brings to the Super Bowl, he's a bigger star, like globally and stuff like that. He's done arena tours. He's going on another arena tour next year. So I think it's a no-brainer. Like I said, he's probably going to bring out SZA for that as well. So that's another big star that you're going to have. You think only way I saw Lil Wayne getting it if it was like a Young Money Super Bowl performance, and like he could do it with a Drake and with a Nicki, that would have made that would have made sense, because like you got two megastars to pull your weight, but like he doesn't, to me, have the Super Bowl songs, like the big, like he has our era, our culture type of songs. So like we would like it, but is everyone going to then?
Yeah, and you also got to think too, like Super Bowl halftime performances are not even like, they're more so laying the foundation for the artists, because I believe that I'm not sure if the artists are actually getting paid for. They're not even getting paid for it. So it's really a big marketing, a marketing plan. And you look at this year, amid the, Kendrick Lamar and Drake beef, everything has just been marketing, right? I feel like it's more so I feel like if you want to learn, like if you want to understand marketing, you study that, that, I don't want to call it a beef, but like that rivalry. And now you're kind of now that it's going to be on a Super Bowl, because when you think of that single, that they not like us. I think it was Fat Joe said on Carmelo's podcast 7 p.m. in Brooklyn that song's not going nowhere. Like that song is going to be played 50 years from now. Like they said it's like the modern day. I think it was like that jump, like, like that's that's not going nowhere. So it's going to be interesting to see how he builds off that going forward.
Man, you brought up a good point. On here we talk about the business and the business behind things, and the marketing mastery that Kendrick put on from start to finish is amazing. Like he threw out the bait with the Like That record. Drake took it, came right back at him, and then it was like every single time he had something ready for him. and he just outmaneuvered him. And then like all of the little small things of like including culture, including like attacking him from that standpoint. It was just a display of how you're supposed to maneuver and the rollouts. The Juneteenth show with Amazon Prime. He showed what he can do and what a Super Bowl performance would look like. At every step of the way, he was amazing in how he displayed execution. Like one of my shirts is dream big then execute. I'm gonna have one with Kendrick, dream big and execute. Like he had it all the way in his head. Then he went out and executed. Like you can have something, but if you don't go out and execute it, it means nothing.
Yeah, no, I think you said it best there. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Yep. So let's move on to college football, man. College football was big. I know there's some bowl games on the day. That was it's been pretty exciting with different bowl games. But college football in 2024 was not short of being dramatic. They expanded the playoffs, hectic transfer portal, and then one thing I forgot about was Nick Saban retired this year. That was crazy. And then NIL continues to reshape the sport, and we'll get into NIL. I'm going to separate these two topics. I think NIL is its own topic in itself. So we'll go with college football. What was your thoughts? What stood out to you? How do you feel about the play? We'll start with the playoffs.
Yeah, I think the playoffs was, exactly what we, expected it to be. I mean, of course, people have complaining about the blowouts, but I think also too, I think most fans are not factoring in how, from a revenue standpoint, those first round playoff games are going to impact those particular schools. When you think about tickets, when you think about concessions and
Yep.
merchandise, how
Yep.
that's going to happen. And what I predict is that, as the playoffs become more of a regular thing, a 12-team playoff, we're going to see more home games, right, during these playoffs. Because you think about it, right now that we're in like the quarterfinals of the playoffs. Now we're getting into like the New Year's Six bowls, but I think that we're going to probably have a similar format to when we had with the 4 teams, where you had specific New Year. It wasn't all the New Year's Six bowls, but maybe it was like they picked like 4 to host the championship or the semis. And I think that that's what you're going to probably see, like those key bowl games kind of get pushed back, or you're not necessarily pushed back, but you're essentially going to see more home playoff games because of the revenue. And when those numbers come out, the colleges are going to be like, wow, we need to see more of those. And I think it's a way to get fans, more interested and more locked in, because they're not used to playing football in the beginning of December and into January like they're doing now.
I think that's a good point, and I think it speaks to even further expanding the playoffs. It's two reasons I say that. One is you've been seeing all these things about different players sitting out, and protecting themselves.
Yeah.
If they're playing in the playoffs, they're not sitting out there to protect themselves, right? They're going to play because they have a chance to win in the championship. So if you look at like a Cam Ward, what I'm saying, you look at like even Colorado, like Shedeur to play, but are they really into it? Because it's like, okay, well, what am I playing for? It's like, y'all don't care about these. Like for maybe smaller schools, these things mean something, but I'm trying to get this. I'm trying to get to the NFL. And so if I'm not playing for the playoff, for the chance to win the championship, then what am I playing for? And so what I think it does is, okay, you expand this, and let's just say Miami doesn't just miss the playoffs. You expand this, Alabama doesn't just miss the playoffs. They have a extra game that means something, right? And now, like you just said, it's bringing in revenue. It's bringing in more interest in it, and more interest in the bowl game, like quote unquote, you turn, instead of having meaningless bowl games, you give some of these bowl games to the playoff teams. So, okay, it's a home game, but it's a bowl game for, let's just say, the Pop-Tart Bowl, because that was one of the ones that was really, big. So let's just say the Pop-Tart Bowl was a home game for Miami versus Alabama. I don't, just
Right.
whoever.
Whatever team
Miami, Alabama. Now people are tuning in. Now people are paying attention because now it goes to the next round, and it's more revenue, more time for the teams to play more games. What it also does is during the regular season, you can eliminate some of these smaller games that people don't care about, that you're scheduling, these cupcake schedule that you're talking about. You don't schedule some of those. You just take away less games, and then now you have more playoff games where they're playing more meaningful games. I think that's something that we can see in the future.
No, absolutely.
So what do you think about the transfer portal? Like everything that's been going on, players transferring before the playoffs, even start or thinking about transferring before the playoffs even start? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that there has to be some sort of a regulation, for it, because it's just like, and when I mean by regulation, I don't think it should be, I think at the end of the day, you got to think about the players, because not only you got to think about not just the players at the Division I level who are gearing up for bowl games like that, but it's like, it's more than just, it's more that you got to think about the players on other division levels, D2, all these people that are involved in this transfer process are not just these main teams. So you hear these coaches saying, they got to change it, like something's got to happen. But at the same time, you're not the player. And I think that there are some coaches that came out, supporting, players. I think it was Kenny Dillingham, Arizona State's head football coach, who was saying that, I have a player that's going in the portal, but, I'm going to help them as much as I can, to help with that process, even though he's preparing for, a major bowl game at the same time. So I think that there has to be some balance, and I think that coaches have to be a little bit more understanding with these players and not just like throw them under the bus, because they are just as much as the coaches come out and critique the players. Think back to all the coaches that have left schools during seasons, during key moments for bigger jobs. So it's like we can't be hypocritical, especially as adults. We can't be hypocritical towards the kids for taking advantage of or taking their future into their own hands. But I do think that there has to be some sort of maybe a period in which it happens and you can transfer within these guidelines. But, I think that there's a little bit of hypocrisy there between these coaches and how they talk about these players who are transferring. I think it needs to be addressed as well.
There's absolutely hypocrisy to what's been going on with that. I don't like players that are running from competition or things like that. But like you said, you cannot be hypocritical, because it just kills me when coaches are, going and talking bad about players, or even just fans that are talking bad about players that are seeking out better opportunities. I do think that there's something to be said about just chasing the money for your opportunity, but I still think that there's something to be said about I have a finite amount of time that I can make money. If I'm a 18, 19-year-old and you're going to offer me this money, then why would I not take the best opportunity for me to get this money that you're offering me? Now, I think that like you said, I think that the common denominator is the adults in all these situations that are, maybe advising or selling the kids who take, just the money in every opportunity, or always asking you're leading with talking about money versus leading with talking about opportunity. I think that's probably where when I do see these players, with this money and when they're making these decisions, is like, talk about the opportunity. Like, are you going to be able to play and utilize your skill set in the best way in the place that you're trying to transfer to, or are you just taking on taking on this opportunity of just the money?
Yeah, I mean, I think that also too, there's going to come down to, certain positions, right? Like there's only you can only play one quarterback. Like there's only one quarterback that can play on the field at the same time. So you have certain positions and certain players that, they got to really evaluate, what's really best for them. And like you said, leading with, opportunity versus money. I can see that definitely, being the case for some players.
Yeah. Yeah. No. So I think that's something big as far as the transfer portal. And then we can go right into the NIL aspect of it and understand. And that has been big. Like we've talked about the AJs of the world. We talked about how Angel Reese has been impacting sponsorships when she was in college. Caitlin Clark, all these different things. We'll talk about them a little bit later. But what's your thoughts on? Is it benefiting the athletes in smaller sports? Like what do you? Or is it only, for the big time athletes? What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think that, when it comes to the value of NIL, I mean, we can't necessarily fake the funk and understanding that there are some sports that generate more money for colleges than others. So you think of the basketballs and the footballs of the world, I think that those players will essentially dominate, most of the NIL, revenue, because of just how much money they bring in to the schools. And I think that, with that revenue share that's coming up, within, I believe, within 2025, I think that's going to change the entire dynamic within NIL, because now, the institutions are going to be paying schools. So now they can be super selective as far as, how much they pay. They can actually look at the balance sheet and say, hey, did this, did your team bring in, this amount of money? Like how far, like how much exposure, how many games, how many people are watching these games? So I think that they're going to be even more strategic as far as how they, decide who gets what. But I think it's going to be mostly dominated by, football and basketball. You might have some baseball in there, volleyball maybe, but I think that it'll be dominated heavily. The heavy earners are going to come from, the basketball and football side of things.
Yeah. Well, and what's your thoughts on it and how it's impacting recruiting?
I think I feel like that's what you have to lead with now in recruiting, right? I think that that's what it's not necessarily playoff time, but I think the icing on the cake, is, the NIL opportunities. So I think that you're going to see, more players that are now going to say like, hey, I'm not, I'm weighing my options, not just on the opportunities, but also who's going to give me the best NIL opportunity.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to have to lead with that. It's going to be arguably like, how much money, not only how much money you can give me, but it's like, if we look at it from a salary cap standpoint, it's like, can you bring on additional players beyond just me to make, because I think athletes have to think about that too. It's like, it's like in the NFL, if you're dominating the cap, you can't bring in, all these superstars and think that you're going to still get paid top dollar. Like the money has to be spread around. So I think that's going to dominate recruiting a lot going forward.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. And that's from a college football and from a, about college basketball standpoint. I don't think we can leave college football and not talk about the year that Travis Hunter had. What's your thoughts on that?
Man, unbelievable. I mean, I think it was an unbelievable season by him. I think that the moves that he's made, I mean, securing that Adidas NIL deal, I think most recently, but then capping it off with the Heisman. I know a lot of people, we're kind of critiquing and saying like, well, he shouldn't have won the Heisman, right? But when you look at his numbers and you look at what he's done on the field, I think that alone, I think speaks for itself. And then I think that, he has essentially like laid that foundation, as far as, the prototype, of athlete in this generation that comes to NIL. Like he has a podcast, he's aligned himself with major brands. He has his own, he's done apparel. He has really laid that foundation. He's also done it on the field as well. So it's not just off the field stuff. So I think that he has that right combination of, appeal off the field, but also that superstar quality that you want, you want to see in young marketable athletes.
Yeah, and I think it's I know it was a lot of controversy surrounding him and his girl and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And it overshadowed the season that he had. And like you said, the marketability he had of just being like a good kid that just out there having fun and playing the game. And I think that's I think that's something that definitely should be highlighted, of just like the amazing season that he had of playing both ways when you're having games of having like 100 something yards at a touchdown and then interceptions. Like it's crazy.
It was crazy. The season was crazy.
Yeah. So I definitely want to let's go right into the fan experience, man. I think we talked a little bit about the streaming wars and things like that. What do you see for the future for or let's look back to what happened in 2024, but then also what you see for the future?
Yeah, I think for, just looking back on 2024, we talked about this in previous conversations, but, Cosm's impact, like, as we were talking about, just not just Cosm, but, or just essentially immersive venues, that 30% year over year growth in fan engagement. So people are actually, on top of, let's say you're not able to go to the actual game, you can go to a Cosm and get the, that same experience. So I think that you're going to see variations of this pop up in 2025. And then you also look at the aspect of alternative broadcast. The Manning cast had 45% increase in viewership, 11 million viewers in, across specific games. So I think that you're going to see more, similar kind of, alternative broadcasts that are more maybe interactive. See, like, I think the NFL, did a lot with like Nickelodeon and offering these different like kind of ulterior forms. I think I believe the Bengals played in like a Simpsons themed game. So I think you're going to have more theme games, things that just kind of appeal to, that Gen Z, generation as well. And I think that's a demographic that a lot of other, major sports are going to try to tackle as well. So yeah, I think that that's what we can expect going forward.
No, I think because even like the NBA on Christmas Day, they did like Mickey Mouse and Goofy. I saw like Cat being Goofy. It was like really cool. Or like that when Wemby was playing, like you get to see those types of things. And I think that's it just goes back to like being able to touch that younger demographic, and you have to find different ways to be able to tap in with them and keep them engaged. And because it's really a microwave, generation of, hey, I want to be able to consume this thing fast, and I want to be able to consume it quick, but I want to be able to be entertained. I actually was able to go to Cosm to watch an NFL game, and I can tell you that it was like amazing. Like, so I see that they're supposed to be building one in Atlanta, within the next year. So I think it's going to continue to grow. Those interactive experiences are going to be, things that, like we said, is not necessarily going to show up in the ratings, but like fans want to be touched in different ways.
Yeah, no, I think that, that any way that you can appeal to them and bring the product directly to them is gonna be crazy.
Yeah, and so well, I wanted to make sure we talked about the Manicast, like even just from podcasts and like Pat McAfee, how he was able to partner with ESPN. I think that's been big. And I think we're going to see a lot more of those. Like, we see like Jeff Teagues of the world growing. We see the Shannon Sharps, the KGs, those types of opportunities. We even see Stephen A. Stepping outside of ESPN and trying to grow his own media network. I think it's going to be very big. What are you thinking you're going to be seeing more in the digital and the media aspect?
Yeah, I think that we're going to see more podcasts as you mentioned, and with specific players. Like I don't think that everybody's podcast is going to be as successful. I think that when you bring up the likes of like KG, I'm not necessarily not as successful, but I'm saying the engagement piece of your podcast, right? Like Kevin Garnett, like we remember him playing for the Timberwolves, iconic commercials with Kevin Garnett. So we're going to tap into what he's saying. So I think that it's a way to kind of get everybody involved, in this podcast space. But I think that you're going to see more of that, and primarily, with the young stars, right? I think you're going to see more, young stars finding ways to branch out and market themselves as they're seeing other players, get that success from a podcasting standpoint. So I think that that's just going to continue to grow next year.
Agree. I think like to close out, we cannot end the year without talking about women's sports and women's basketball. The year that Caitlin Clark had, second to none. I think like she probably was the biggest thing, talked about, her having an immediate impact on the WNBA and, what she was shattering records in college basketball, then went to the NBA and boosted the ticket sales. So what's your thoughts on women's sports this year?
Yeah, I think that women's sports are going to continue to grow. I think that what Cheryl Miller kind of said it best when the WNBA inked that media deal. Even though it was a big media deal, I still feel like it's undervalued, right? I think that they kind of lowballed, given the stars that we're going to see, particularly right now, seeing women's college basketball. Now they're going to be transitioning to the WNBA. So it's like, how do you evaluate now this new crop of, the Juju Watkinses of the world, the Laser Fulwiley's that are going to, Olivia Miles, Hannah Dog, all of these names are going to now be in WNBA. And you've already solidified a media deal just based off of Caitlin Clark and the amount of attention. But what about, who's to say that, Juju Watkins can't come in and garner that same type of attraction? So I think that, women's sports as a whole, not just from the WNBA standpoint, but women's basketball, women's volleyball, we've seen games played in college that, they're packing stadiums, the most viewed, games. So I think that they're taking a large step, but I think that in some cases, like on the basketball side within WB, I feel like, we think we know the value, but I feel like the value is a lot larger than what, we're anticipating.
No, I agree. And so to a certain extent, they may have, maybe pulled the trigger a little too early.
Yeah, I think we'll see. I think they did, but we'll see how it pans out.
Well, no, as we close, I know we hit on all the topics. 2024 definitely showed us a lot of different things, and we'll continue to see it evolve. Growth, innovation, all that stuff. But we'll definitely be back in 2025 to talk about it more.
Absolutely. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.